Hold your right hand up in front of your face. Look at your index finger and your ring finger. One of them is probably longer than the other. You have seen these two fingers your entire life, and you have never once thought about what they are telling you. But scientists have. For over 3 decades, researchers across biology, psychology, and medicine have been obsessively measuring these two fingers. And what they've found is so consistent, so repeatedly verified across hundreds of studies and hundreds of thousands of participants, that this single measurement, the ratio between your index finger and your ring finger, has become one of the most published topics in human biology. It is linked to your athletic ceiling, your cognitive wiring, your tolerance for risk, your likelihood of developing certain diseases, and even how your brain processes aggression and empathy. 2 fingers. This is not a parlor trick, and it is not astrology. This is one of the most heavily replicated findings in modern science, and by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why your fingers grew the way they did, and what that growth silently encoded into your biology. Before we get into what the ratio reveals, you need to understand why it reveals anything at all. Because on the surface, this sounds absurd. How could the length of 2 fingers possibly predict your athletic ability or your health risks? The answer starts 9 weeks after conception. Around week 9 of fetal development, there is a critical hormonal window where the same receptors that shape your ring finger also shape your brain, your cardiovascular system, your muscle fiber composition, and your organ development. During this window, the fetus is bathed in a specific balance of testosterone and estrogen. If testosterone runs higher during this period, the ring finger grows longer relative to the index finger. If estrogen is more dominant, the index finger catches up or grows slightly longer. This is not a subtle effect. The hormonal environment during this brief window physically sculpts your finger bones through androgen receptors concentrated in the 4th digit. And here is the critical part. Those exact same hormones, at that exact same time, are simultaneously wiring your brain and calibrating your organ systems. Your ring finger did not cause any of these traits. It grew alongside them. It is a receipt, a biological timestamp of the hormonal environment that built you. Researchers call it the 2D to 4D ratio. 2D is your index finger, the 2nd digit. 4D is your ring finger, the 4th digit. A lower ratio means your ring finger is noticeably longer than your index. A higher ratio means they are close to the same length, or the index is slightly longer. To see yours clearly, place your right hand flat on a table with your fingers together. Look at where each fingertip ends. Most people can see the difference immediately. Now that you understand the mechanism, let's talk about what this ratio has been connected to. And we will start with the one that has the most data behind it. Athletic performance. A study led by John Manning at Swansea University, the researcher who essentially launched this entire field, examined professional football players and found a striking pattern. Players with lower digit ratios, meaning a longer ring finger, were significantly more likely to reach the elite level. But it was not just football. Subsequent research found similar patterns across sprinting, rugby, skiing, and endurance sports. A meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine reviewed data from over 25 studies and concluded that a lower digit ratio is consistently associated with higher physical performance, particularly in activities demanding speed, strength, and cardiovascular endurance. The proposed explanation is straightforward. Higher prenatal testosterone exposure does not just lengthen the ring finger. It also appears to influence fast twitch muscle fiber density, oxygen uptake efficiency, and cardiovascular capacity. You are not looking at a finger. You are looking at a proxy for your entire physical blueprint. However, this does not mean a higher digit ratio makes someone unathletic. It means the advantages may lie elsewhere, which is exactly what the cognitive research reveals. Because when researchers turned their attention from the body to the brain, the pattern reversed in a fascinating way. A higher digit ratio, where the index and ring fingers are closer in length, has been repeatedly associated with stronger verbal fluency, superior reading comprehension, and better performance on language-based tasks. Research published in Psychoneuroendocrinology found that children with higher ratios tended to score higher on literacy assessments, while those with lower ratios showed stronger performance on spatial and mathematical tests. This maps directly onto the prenatal hormone model. Higher estrogen exposure during that critical window appears to favor the development of verbal and communication-oriented neural pathways. Higher testosterone exposure appears to favor spatial reasoning and pattern recognition. Neither configuration is smarter, they are differently optimized. Your fingers are showing you which cognitive lane your prenatal wiring nudged you toward. And the word nudged matters here. This is a statistical tendency, not a sentence. Plenty of people with low ratios are brilliant writers, and plenty with high ratios are elite athletes. The ratio captures a population-level trend, not an individual destiny. But the trend is so consistent across studies that it has become impossible for the scientific community to dismiss. And now it gets stranger. Because beyond sports and cognition, researchers discovered that the digit ratio correlates with something far more behavioral: risk tolerance. A landmark study from Cambridge University examined traders on a London trading floor. Researchers led by John Coates measured each trader's digit ratio and then tracked their profit and loss over nearly 2 years. The traders with lower digit ratios, the longer ring finger group, were not just slightly more profitable. They were substantially more successful, with significantly higher long-term earnings. The explanation Coates proposed was not that these traders were smarter. It was that they were physiologically more comfortable with uncertainty. The same prenatal testosterone that shaped their ring finger also appeared to calibrate their stress response system, making them less reactive to volatility and more willing to hold positions through turbulence. The higher ratio traders, by contrast, tended to respond more cautiously to risk. They were faster to exit positions and more sensitive to losses. Again, neither approach is inherently better. In a volatile market, the risk takers profit. In a crashing market, the cautious ones survive. But the fact that a measurement taken from someone's hand could predict their financial behavior 2 years into the future is what made this study one of the most talked about findings in behavioral finance. The ratio also appears to influence something deeply personal: aggression and empathy. Multiple studies have found that lower digit ratios are modestly associated with higher physical aggression, particularly reactive aggression, the kind triggered by perceived threat rather than planned hostility. A study published in Aggressive Behavior examined this across several cultures and found the correlation held even when controlling for body size and testosterone levels measured in adulthood. This is important because it suggests the link is not about how much testosterone you have now. It is about how much you were exposed to before birth. That prenatal calibration appears to set a baseline for how reactive your threat detection systems are. On the other side, higher digit ratios have been linked in some research to higher self-reported empathy and stronger emotional reading ability. A study in the journal Personality and Individual Differences found that individuals with higher ratios scored higher on cognitive empathy tasks, meaning they were better at accurately interpreting what other people were feeling. The theory is that the same estrogen-dominant prenatal environment that lengthened the index finger also developed the neural architecture for social perception. Your fingers may be reflecting whether your brain was wired to react first or read the room first. But perhaps the most consequential area of digit ratio research is the one people talk about the least: health. Emerging studies have begun connecting the ratio to long-term disease markers. And while this research is still developing, the early patterns are difficult to ignore. A study published in the British Journal of Cancer found that men with lower digit ratios had a modestly higher statistical risk of prostate cancer, which researchers believe traces back to that same prenatal androgen exposure influencing prostate tissue sensitivity decades later. In women, some studies have explored connections between higher ratios and certain breast cancer markers, though the findings are less consistent, and researchers emphasize that much more work is needed before drawing clinical conclusions. Cardiovascular research has added another dimension. Data published in the journal Heart found that individuals with lower ratios tended to have slightly more favorable cardiovascular profiles, possibly because the same testosterone exposure that lengthened their ring finger also influenced the development of a more efficient heart and vascular system. None of this means you can diagnose yourself by looking at your hand, but it does mean that your fingers are carrying a faint but measurable echo of the hormonal environment that shaped your most critical organs. There is one more finding that deserves attention because it fundamentally changes how we think about this measurement. The ratio is not the same on both hands. Research has shown that the right hand tends to be a more sensitive marker of prenatal hormone exposure than the left hand. In many studies, the effects are stronger or only significant when measuring the right hand. This asymmetry appears to exist because the right and left hands develop under slightly different hormonal microenvironments in the womb, and the right hand seems to be more responsive to fluctuations in androgen levels. So if you measured your left hand and saw an ambiguous result, check your right. That is the one most researchers use as the primary indicator. Now, let me be direct about what this measurement is and what it is not. Your digit ratio is a population-level statistical tool. It identifies trends across large groups with remarkable consistency, but it does not define you as an individual. You are not your finger length any more than you are your shoe size. Human behavior, ability, and health are shaped by thousands of interacting variables: genetics, environment, choices, random chance. What makes the digit ratio valuable is not that it tells you who you are. It is that it gives you a window into a moment you cannot remember, a 9-week hormonal event that happened before you had a functioning brain, that quietly influenced the trajectory of your body and mind in ways you can now, for the first time, actually see. So here is what I want you to do. Place your right hand flat on a surface right now. Look at your index finger and your ring finger. Which one is longer? Drop your answer in the comments. Ring finger longer, index finger longer, or almost exactly the same? I want to see how this audience splits. And if you found out something about yourself you did not expect today, leave a like so this reaches someone else who has been staring at their hands their entire life without knowing what they were looking at.